It was supposed to be a quick stop. Grab a charger, maybe a coffee, and get out before the mall's holiday chaos set in. But the smell of cinnamon pretzels and the echo of distant Christmas music slowed her pace. Elena adjusted the strap of her worn leather bag and glanced at the time. She hadn't meant to be this early. The bench near the vending machine was surprisingly empty. She sat with a sigh, rubbing her temples. The lights overhead buzzed faintly, and across from her a group of teenagers laughed too loudly by the escalators. She tried not to notice them. What she did notice was the boy. He was sitting on the floor, legs crossed, arms tucked into a puffy jacket 2 sizes too big. His hair was unbrushed, his face pale under the fluorescent lights. He wasn't begging, wasn't talking, just staring straight ahead, like he wasn't really seeing anything. Elena followed his gaze. It landed nowhere, just the dull floor tiles. A woman passed with a stroller, giving the boy a quick glance before hurrying on. 2 security guards walked by without a word. Elena hesitated, then opened her bag, rummaging past receipts and a nearly empty wallet until her fingers brushed the granola bar she hadn't eaten on the train. She stood, walked over, crouched slowly, holding the bar out like a peace offering. He looked at her, really looked, green eyes, too sharp for someone that small. "I'm not hungry," he said. His voice was clear, not afraid, almost tired. Elena blinked. "You sure?" He nodded once, then added, "But you look like you haven't eaten." The words hit harder than they should have. She let out a small laugh, the kind that hides something. "I'm fine," she said, though she wasn't sure if she meant physically or anything else. The boy tilted his head. "People who say that usually aren't." She sat down beside him slowly. The tile was cold through her coat. They sat in silence for a moment. Nearby, someone's phone buzzed. A child cried in the distance. Somewhere behind them, coins clattered into the vending machine. "Oh, what's your name?" she asked, finally. He didn't answer right away. Then, carefully, "Nico." She nodded. "Elena." He didn't say nice to meet you. Didn't ask anything. Just watched the lights overhead as if they might fall. Elena hesitated, then tried again. "Are you waiting for someone?" He glanced at her. "No, but maybe someone's waiting for you." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Nico leaned back against the wall. "You don't belong here." The way he said it wasn't cruel, just observant. Elena wanted to argue, but the mall suddenly felt too loud, too bright. She looked around. The polished floors, the familiar franchise signs, the decorations meant to cheer. She used to come here every week, years ago, before she left this city, before everything changed. "I haven't been here in a long time," she said quietly. The boy didn't ask why. Instead, he said, "Then maybe you came back for a reason." And just like that, Elena realized she had no idea who this boy really was. A mall employee passed them with a cart of janitorial supplies, glancing briefly at Elena and Nico. He didn't stop, just kept moving, as if the two of them were part of the background. Nico didn't move either. He had pulled his sleeves over his hands, and now he was watching the floor again, like it might start shifting beneath them. Elena tried to make sense of the moment. She wasn't sure why she was still sitting on the cold tile beside a boy she didn't know. She'd planned to go to her hotel after this, the cheap one off Route 47, where no one asked questions. But something about Nico's voice, steady, unblinking, held her. She noticed his coat more clearly now. It wasn't just oversized. It had a patch on the shoulder, an emblem, old, faded, but familiar. "Where'd you get that?" she asked, pointing lightly to the patch. He glanced down, shrugged. "Found it." Elena's chest tightened. Her father used to wear a coat just like that. The emblem was from a factory that closed a decade ago. Her uncle had worked there, too. Small town, small world. But what were the odds? "You from around here?" The boy didn't answer. "Look," she said softly, "I'm not trying to bother you. You left," he said, not looking at her. The words cut through the air like glass. Elena's throat went dry. He turned his head, not sharply, but slowly, with a calm too heavy for someone his age. "You left this place. You left a lot of people behind." Her mouth opened. No sound came out. "How do you know that?" He didn't answer. He just looked at her like he was watching her remember. "You don't know me," she said, a little more defensively now. But the boy's eyes, deep, knowing, impossibly calm, didn't flinch. He stood slowly brushing crumbs from his jeans. "Not yet," he said, and then he walked away. Not hurried, just away. Elena stayed on the floor for a full minute, maybe more. She didn't know whether to follow, call out, or pretend it hadn't happened. But when she finally stood, her heart was pounding. The boy didn't take the granola bar, but she noticed something under the bench. A folded photograph. She picked it up with shaking fingers. It was old, curled at the edges. A woman in a yellow dress, standing in front of a brick house. Her, from before. She didn't remember taking that photo. She didn't remember who took it. But she remembered the dress. She stuffed the picture into her coat pocket and hurried after the boy. Elena weaved through the mall crowd, her eyes scanning every bench, every shop front, every corner. Nico was gone. She checked near the food court. Nothing. Near the toy store with the flashing LED robots. No sign of him. Her breath grew shallow. This wasn't just about a boy anymore. Not after that photograph. That yellow dress. That house. That moment she didn't even remember being captured. Why would he have that? Her shoes clicked too loudly against the tile. People looked at her like she was rushing toward a sale. No one else seemed to notice anything unusual. But something had cracked open inside her. She stopped outside a bookstore. Her reflection in the glass startled her, hair tousled, eyes wide, like someone lost at sea. "Ma'am?" The voice came from a woman behind a kiosk selling phone cases. Mid-40s, hoop earrings, chewing gum like it was a job. "Are you okay?" the woman asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Elena tried to smile. I'm looking for someone." "Kid, about 12, ratty coat?" Elena's breath caught. Yes. "Did you see where he went?" The woman pointed lazily toward the back exit by the parking structure. "Slipped out 10 minutes ago. Looked like he knew where he was going. Had a strange look in his eye. Smart kid, though. Polite." "Thanks," Elena said, already walking. Outside, the sky was turning the color of steel. Late afternoon shadows stretched across the pavement. She turned toward the bus stop, then the alley beside the dumpster, then the narrow sidewalk leading behind the mall. And there he was. Nico stood with his back to her, facing a mural painted on the wall, a bright swirl of colors, almost like graffiti, but older. Part of the town's attempt at art restoration, maybe. The mural was faded, cracked in places, but Elena knew it. It was painted by her brother, years ago. Before the accident, her knees wobbled. Nico turned around, as if sensing her behind him. Not surprised, not afraid. "You used to stand here," he said, "right in front of this wall, every Thursday." Elena felt the breath leave her lungs. "How do you know that?" He didn't smile, didn't blink. "You brought sandwiches in a paper bag, and you cried sometimes, but you thought no one saw." Her throat closed up. "Who are you?" she asked, barely able to get the words out. He looked up at her. "You remember the river?" he asked. Elena's mind flashed. A boy laughing, throwing rocks, a bridge, a promise made, then gone. Her vision blurred. "Lucas," she whispered. The name came out like wind through broken glass. But the boy only looked at her quietly, then turned back to the mural, like the answer had been there all along. Elena sat on the curb, her arms resting on her knees, the mural at her back. Nico stood a few steps away, quiet, watching the clouds gather. She had no words. Lucas was gone, drowned at 9 years old. That was the truth everyone accepted, the obituary, the closed casket. Her family never spoke of it again. She never went back to the river. "How do you know Lucas?" she finally asked, her voice rough. Nico tilted his head. "I don't." She blinked. "But you said—" "I don't know him. Not really, but I know what he would have said if he could talk to you now." Her hands clenched into fists. "This isn't funny." "I'm not joking." He stepped closer, rummaged in his coat pocket, and pulled out a small folded card. It was old, worn around the edges, soft like it had been held 1,000 times. He handed it to her. Inside was a hand-drawn sketch. A tree, a crooked river, a bridge, 2 stick figures. One had long hair. The other had a big smile and a word above his head. Lou. Elena swallowed hard. "Where did you get this?" Nico looked down. "I found it in a box at the shelter. They were cleaning out some donations. It was inside a lunchbox. The woman running the place said it was probably tossed out from an estate sale, but I kept it." He looked up. "I don't think I was supposed to. I think it was meant for you." Elena's hands trembled. The edges of the drawing blurred. "Who are your parents?" she asked suddenly. "I don't know. Not really." Bounced around. "I used to think I was missing something, but lately—" He looked at her again. "Now I think I was supposed to find something, or someone." They sat in silence. Then she said it, the thing she hadn't said in 23 years. I left him alone. I was supposed to watch him, and I left, just for a minute. Nico didn't move. Elena pressed the drawing to her chest. I've been trying to fix things ever since. That's why I moved away, changed my name, started over. But nothing ever felt mine. Maybe that's because you haven't forgiven yourself. A cold wind passed. Elena looked at him. I'm just a boy, he said. But maybe you needed someone to remind you that not everything broken is your fault. Thunder rolled far away. She looked at him again, really looked. His face was different now, not Lucas's, not exactly, but there was something in his eyes, something still and steady, like water that never stopped moving beneath the surface. He stood and offered her a hand. Come on, he said. You shouldn't be out here in the rain. She took it, not because she needed help up, but because, for the first time in years, someone was reaching back. They found shelter beneath the overhang of a shuttered bookstore. The windows were dusty, the neon sign half lit. Elena sat on an overturned crate while Nico paced in slow circles. You hungry? She asked. He nodded, hesitant. She handed him the sandwich she hadn't touched since lunch. It's not much. He took it like it was treasure. Thank you. Inside the glass, a faded poster of a poetry reading hung crooked. Someone had once believed in words enough to print them in color. Elena watched Nico eat in silence. She was still holding the drawing. She hadn't let go of it once. Where do you go at night? She asked. Nico shrugged. Here and there. There's a church that leaves the back door open if it's really cold. I know which restaurants toss out clean food. It's not so bad. You're 12. Almost 13, he corrected. She exhaled sharply. And no one's looking for you. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve. People only look for things they lost on purpose, not things they forgot they had. The rain fell harder now, a thick curtain between them and the street. A woman in a red coat passed, glancing at them with suspicion. Elena's mind flickered to what they looked like, a disheveled woman in her 30s, and a boy who clearly didn't belong to her. Do you trust me? She asked, surprising herself. Nico paused. More than I probably should. I want to help, really. There's a friend of mine, she works for a non-profit. They have places for kids, but they're not like the shelters. It's safer, brighter. He nodded, chewing his lip. Okay? They watched the rain, in silence. Why did you come to the mall today? Elena asked. He smiled faintly. I think I was supposed to meet someone. Me? He looked over. You ever think some people find each other because they're carrying pieces the other one dropped? She didn't answer, just stared at the puddles, reflections rippling in everyone. That night, she booked them a motel room under her old name. Not Elena, not the one she'd become after running. She signed in as Ellie Summers, the name she hadn't written since high school. And as she handed over the key, she realized her hand wasn't shaking anymore. The motel room smelled like bleach and lemon soap. One bed, one lamp, two towels folded into triangles. Nico dropped his backpack onto the floor and immediately opened the curtains an inch to watch the rain blur the parking lot lights. Elena sat on the bed and kicked off her soaked shoes. The quiet felt unnatural after the day they'd had. "You can take the bed," she offered. "I'll sleep in the chair." He rolled his eyes. "I've slept in worse places. We can share." She raised a brow, but something in his tone, not boldness, just calm, made her nod. As she changed into a dry sweater, she noticed Nico pulling a folded photo from his backpack. It was creased and faded, but he smoothed it out carefully and laid it on the nightstand. A woman and a little boy stood in front of a swing set. The woman's face was turned toward the camera, half laughing. Her hair looked like Elena's when it was longer. "Who's she?" Elena asked gently. "My mom," he said. "Sort of." Elena froze. "Sort of?" "She raised me, but she didn't give birth to me." Something thudded behind her ribs. "She was someone who found me, took care of me, taught me how to read before I could count. She said I didn't come from her body, but I came from her choice." Elena turned slowly to face him. "What happened to her?" Nico didn't look away. "She left a long time ago." The silence was suffocating. He added, almost too softly to hear, "People say she died, but no one ever saw a body. No one had a funeral, just left." Elena couldn't breathe. The rain tapped against the window in rhythm. Nico stood and walked to the small desk. He opened his bag again, rummaged through papers and wrappers, then pulled out something he hadn't shown before, a journal. Old, leather-bound, the kind sold in stationery stores no one shops at anymore. He flipped it open and slid it toward her. She stared. It was her handwriting. From years ago, pages torn from her own diary pasted inside, doodles she used to draw when she couldn't sleep, a list of baby names. "How did you—" "I found it," Nico said, "in a thrift shop box, with books and frames. It had your name inside once, Ellie Summers. That's why I came to the mall. The lady said she remembered someone who used to go there. I thought maybe, just maybe." She was shaking now, every buried thing rising at once. "Elena," he said, "not Ellie, not Miss, not ma'am. Are you her?" She didn't know how to answer, so she didn't. She reached out and touched the corner of the photo on the nightstand. It was the only thing in the room not moving. Elena hadn't meant to bring him home. She told herself it was temporary, one night, two at most, just until she figured out who to call. But that was 3 days ago. Now Nico sat curled up on her faded couch, wearing her brother's old hoodie, his knees drawn to his chest, watching cartoons with the sound off. She brought him tea. He didn't ask for it. She just knew he didn't like milk. The house felt warmer with him inside, quieter, too, but not in the lonely way it used to, more like peace. Even her dog, Jasper, once too old to care, now followed Nico around with his ears perked. "You can stay a little longer," she said over her shoulder, pretending to check the mail. He looked up. "I don't mind helping out." "You already do." It was true. He cleaned without being asked. Folded laundry she forgot in the dryer. One morning, she found a note on the fridge. Went to the store with Mr. Travis for eggs. Back soon. Mr. Travis, her neighbor, a retired Navy man who never spoke more than 5 words to her in 10 years, now waved every time he saw her. "You got a good one there," he said once, nodding toward Nico. "Polite. Helped me lift a bag of salt for the porch." At night, she'd check the couch to make sure he had blankets. Sometimes he was already asleep, clutching a book from her brother's shelf. Other times, he was sketching tiny pencil drawings in a spiral notebook, lines sharp and haunting. One night, she asked, "Do you want to call anyone? A friend?" He shook his head. "Not really." She didn't push. But when she sat beside him the next day, leafing through one of her brother's old scrapbooks, Nico leaned closer and said, "He looked like you." She froze. "My brother?" Nico nodded. Same eyes, same way of smiling without showing teeth. She hadn't realized she still had that smile. That evening, Elena drove to the corner store. The clerk, Jamila, a teenager with pink hair and too much eyeliner, leaned over the counter and asked, "That's your kid?" Elena blinked. "What?" "The boy who bought the peanut butter yesterday. Said he lived with you. You look like someone's mom now." It startled her more than it should have. On the way home, she caught herself humming. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe someone from the system would call. Maybe someone would claim him. Maybe he'd leave. But for now, in the small circle of her quiet house, with drawings on the fridge and a dog who finally wagged his tail again, she wasn't the one saving anyone. She was the one being saved. The knock came early, too early for a Saturday. Elena had flour on her hands halfway through making pancakes for the first time in years. Nico was still asleep, curled up in the blanket nest he made on the couch, one arm around Jasper, who had started sleeping beside him like a sentry. She wiped her hands and opened the door. A woman in a gray cardigan stood there holding a clipboard and a tote bag. Her ID badge caught the light. "Hi, sorry to drop by unannounced. I'm Mara Leeds, Child Protective Services." Elena's stomach dropped. Mara softened. "We got a call. A neighbor said there's a minor here, a boy. Mr. Travis, maybe, or someone else who meant well." Elena hesitated. "He's safe. He's been with me a few days." "Can I come in?" She nodded. They sat at the kitchen table. Mara noticed the batter bowl, the 2 mugs. She took it all in, not judgmental, just observant. Elena explained the mall, the food court, how he had nowhere to go, how no one asked any questions. Mara listened without interrupting. Then, "You didn't file a report?" "I didn't know where to start. He didn't want police." "That's common," Mara said gently, "especially with kids who've had bad placements. You're not in trouble, but we do need to confirm things." Elena looked down at her hands. "He doesn't trust easily." "I believe it." They both looked toward the living room. Nico had stirred. He stood at the doorway, blinking, hair a mess. Mara gave him a small smile. "Hi, Nico. I just want to talk. Nothing scary." He didn't run, didn't hide, just walked over and took Elena's hand without a word. That gesture alone told Mara everything. They spoke on the porch later. Mara kept her voice low. He's been in and out of group homes since age 7. Last one was over capacity. Kids fell through cracks. He probably slipped out unnoticed. Elena nodded slowly. He listed no relatives, no emergency contacts, but he mentioned your name to someone 2 weeks ago. She looked up sharply. What? In a journal. They keep reflective journals at the center. Staff found a page. If I find Elena, maybe it won't hurt anymore. Elena's breath caught. Whoa. Mara continued. We don't know who you are to him, but he's anchored here now, and that matters. If you're willing, there are next steps we can take. Foster application. Guardianship, maybe. He clearly chose you. Elena didn't respond right away. That night, she sat by Nico as he sketched another drawing. This time it was her in the kitchen, holding a mug, laughing at something she couldn't remember. I made your chin too big, he muttered. She smiled. I like it. He kept shading. They said I can stay if you want. I want, she said softly. Later, she found herself standing in her brother's old room. She hadn't touched it in years. Dust on the bookshelf. Trophies from swim meets long gone, his posters curling at the edges. She looked at the twin bed, the model cars on the shelf, the baseball cap still hanging on the door hook. She began to clean. It was time the room belonged to someone again. Spring came quietly. Outside her window, the dandelions bloomed again. On the porch steps, Nico walked barefoot now, like he belonged wearing her brother's old shirt, the one he wouldn't take off. Elena barely recognized herself in the mirror. She used to scrub everything clean: memories, emotions, the taste of food. Now her house smelled like pancakes, pencil shavings, Jasper's fur, and a new shampoo Nico had picked for her. Sometimes she woke up in the middle of the night, not from noise, but from silence. But it wasn't emptiness anymore. It was peace. One afternoon, she took Jasper for a walk. Near the school, on a sun-warmed bench, an elderly man in a hat was sitting. Next to him, Nico showed his drawings. He was laughing, explaining something about shading faces and how to draw noses right. The man looked up at her. Is he yours? She opened her mouth, paused. He's my home, she said. Later that evening, she sat on the floor with a photo album she hadn't touched in years. Her brother's handwriting in the margins, old Polaroids from birthdays and hikes. In every photo, a look eyes that said, Stay, this matters. She glanced across the room. Nico sat curled in the chair, sketching Jasper, asleep at his feet. Elena didn't need a reason for why he'd appeared. Some things didn't come with explanations. Some things didn't need to. Sometimes being found wasn't about who you were before it was about who saw you now. That night, Nico fell asleep on the couch with a book open on his chest. Elena covered him with a quilt, brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, and sat beside him. She didn't feel like she was saving him. She felt like maybe he had saved her. Weeks later, the school counselor called. "We've noticed a change in Nico," she said. "He's more open, focused. He even joined art club." Elena smiled into the receiver. "I think he just needed someone to see him," she said. But really she knew the truth. They had both been invisible. They had both been found by each other. And this time they were staying. Have you ever met someone who helped you find a part of yourself? Share your thoughts. In the comments, your story might be the one someone else needs to hear.